I wanted to follow up some questioning on the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. I know Congressman Bilirakis was asking about rate regulation, and you made it very clear that the statutes prohibit NTIA from enacting any rate regulation as part of BEAD. I have to say, first of all, that BEAD has been a game changer in my home state of California. We are implementing projects for almost $2 billion of broadband deployment. So it's going to bring broadband to vast segments of the state that don't have access to it. It's an overwhelmingly good program. One of the points of contention, however, has been with the California Public Utility Commission, who has established a rule that requires that programs that are deployed under BEAD also comply with a restriction that they offer at least 1 gigabit upstream and downstream, and that they cost no more than $30 a month. And that seems a lot like rate regulation to me. So do you think that states like California through the CPUC have the authority to do that kind of rate regulation for projects that we are funding through NTIA under BEAD?
So I'm not as familiar with the specific example that you're giving, and honestly, we wouldn't really be appropriate to comment on a specific state plan right now until we've received it and while it's being under consideration. I'll just say we have said from the beginning we will not do rate regulation at NTIA. We're very cautious about trying to be in the role of setting a rate for broadband nationally. At the same time, we have said that states should have the flexibility, and different states are going to approach this in different ways that are going to meet their state's needs. And so we also think that, you know, as a condition of getting federal money for a state to put certain requirements on providers is understandable. We've tried to spell out the flexibilities that we see in the program, and you know, we're really looking forward to seeing what states come up with.
Okay, well, I mean, that sounds like you might be open to the idea of a state doing this.
Well, I think the question is, again, we don't consider it rate regulation if it's not something that's required of all broadband providers, right? This is not something that all broadband providers have to do. This is something that's a condition of getting this funding. And Congress has said very clearly there needs to be a low-cost option for people who get the funding. States are going to do it in different ways. It's very hard to know. I really think it would depend a lot on the details of what they're proposing and how they're doing it. And again, a low-cost option in our mind is something that should apply, as we've said in our model, should be for the low-income families. And you know, we've considered the basic tiers of service the ones that are most important. So I just don't know enough about the details of what you're suggesting.
All right. Well, I mean, I'd encourage you to look a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, Congress was pretty clear when we authorized BEAD that rate regulation was not on the table, that this was not an effort to regulate rates. And I think it's fair that because those are the conditions under which this money is being provided to the states, that requirement applies to them as well. We're trying to correct a market failure here where we're trying to serve people that are underserved. Yeah. And if we interfere in the markets further, I think that makes our job much harder. So I'd appreciate it if you could look into that, because I don't think that should be allowed. Another thing that I want to talk about as respect to BEAD is something that was brought up by Congressman Soto a little bit. You know, the fact that BEAD is prioritizing the provision of end-to-end fiber. And in California, I mean, specifically, BEAD is wonderful, but we're not even going to get halfway to providing broadband to people that are completely unserved in California with BEAD. I mean, I think the combination of BEAD funding and other sources of funding are about $9 billion in California, and the unmet need is over $9 billion just to provide service to people that have no service at all. So, I mean, we need to look at other ways of providing that service as well, and we've got other compelling options like low Earth orbit, satellite-based. We've got options like wide area networks that might be more efficient. So can you talk a little bit about whether or not it makes sense to include those other kinds of broadband?
So the short answer is absolutely it makes sense to include them. We've known from the start that different states are going to have different needs, but that for many states it's going to need to be a mix of technology if we're going to reach everybody. Look, fiber is fiber is the starting point because, as you know, it's the most extensible, expandable, future-proof version of the technology. That said, things like low Earth orbit satellites are going to be incredibly important in reaching the hardest to reach locations.
All right, I completely agree. Well, I'm out of time. I had a question about your upcoming report on open source AI risks, which I'm very interested in. I'll submit that for the record. Look
Please.
forward to reading it.
Delighted to talk
Yeah.
about it.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.